what is not really the best when you are launching or talking about such important event as it is the decade of science for sustainable development. But let me first of all start by acknowledging the presence of Her Excellency Mr. Elena Bengovi, Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation of Serbia. Thank you, Excellency, for being here. Serbia played an incredible role in making this decade a reality, and having you with us, it's really wonderful. I want also to recognize the panel that we have here, Sir Peter, Michelle, and Carlos, and Oman from the National Commission of Germany. And all of you, it's really a wonderful opportunity for us to really discuss how to advance. And I think the fact that you are here and that we have the room full shows really the importance of science and the potential of science to drive positive changes for all. Really, I have to start also by acknowledging many partners that are not here with us today, but have been engaging with us in starting to shape what this decade can be, and how can we really promote and make sure that science drives sustainable development. And really, I think that's the main objective of the decade, is to put science again at the center of development, at the center of peace, at the center of justice, and more than anything of enlightenment. What we are missing a lot these days is that we as citizens are not using what science is telling us to really act and to really be proactive in the changes that we want to see. So this decade is also about a culture of science. It's about building trust in science, and I will let you know that on the 13th, again together with our colleagues on the social science, social and human science sector, we will have a special session how to build trust in science, because this is something that is really missing in our day-to-day life. We also think that this decade, it's an important opportunity to really mobilize youth and to make sure that we change the trend where we are seeing now, where less and less young people choose to follow STEM careers, choose to pursue STEM studies. And I think this is a huge loss, and I would say even a huge danger, because we are going to see a reduced capacity, critical thinking, curiosity, and inquisition about how can we do better. So this decade should also be and have youth at the center. And let me make also a special reference to female youth. We need more women in science. We need to make sure that all of us really see science as I say in my sector, the wow factor, that when science is there, then everything is possible, because it's a quest to really find the solutions that make sense to all of us. I don't really want to preempt this discussion, but more than anything, again, welcome. Thank you so very much for being here with us. Of course, we need to join forces to mobilize resources. We basically have up to December to really make sure that we have not only a vision and a clear mission for the decade, but that we also have partners, and partners not only at the global level, but also at the regional, at national, at local level. We want really to see a movement for science and science for sustainable development. So let's join hands and really let's make this unique opportunity that is the decade of science for sustainable development to really make a huge transformation in our societies, in our world. So thank you again, and what a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mrs. Brito, for your wise words. You know, as the Club of Rome, we have been now for 55 years trying to ask better questions for the future of humanity. 50 years ago, we published the famous Limits to Growth report, raising the alarm on the unsustainability of the development model that we had at the time, that we still had. And we foresee the need for this decade as an exercise of ambitious learning, as the title said, to transform science and societies, putting all sciences, natural sciences, but also social sciences, humanities, artistic practices, and traditional knowledge, the knowledge accumulated by originary cultures, which is still alive in so many places in the world, put all that, mobilize all that together and put it at the service of humanity and life, if I may, life with a capital L, life at large. I would like to ask to our distinguished panelists the question on what do you foresee as the added value of this decade? How do you feel from your personal and professional experience this decade will help, will contribute to this transformation? How will it make, how do you foresee that it will make a difference? And I would like to start with Minister Jelena Begovic of Science, Technological Development and Innovation of Serbia. Minister, please, what do you think? Maybe
it's working. It's working? Yeah, fine. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me at this event today. It's really my pleasure, and I'm very proud that we're speaking about the science as something that can help us to reach SDGs. So science is of paramount importance, not only for today, but for the future development of humankind. So why science? I mean, science is driving innovation. Science is driving technological development. But also, it's about applying the basic principles of science, and that's a solving problem. We're facing global challenges, so we need to solve the problems. And this is why the science can really step in very efficiently. Also, it's about education. It's about curiosity. That means it's about the critical thinking, and science is about lifelong learning. There is a strong connection these days, and in particular in the future, between science and economy. Science is becoming a driver of innovative economies like bioeconomy. And last but not least, I mean, science, it's all about collaboration. If we're facing the global challenges, we need to think on a global level, and that means everyone must be involved in order to solve the problems that are really tackling every society. So we tend to look in the future, but I think we need to look very clearly at this momentum at the present, because we're still facing huge global challenges, from environmental degradation to inequality, from climate change to poverty, and we need to deal with them. When we look at the numbers, how successful are we at this midterm point in reaching SDGs? I mean, we're really lagging behind, with 15% of some targets reached, but the most of those charts are in those red and orange area, which means we are lagging behind. And that means that we do need to change the approach, the methodology, and we need to speed up the process. This is why the science is very, very important. So, science is trying to explain the most complex processes in the nature, from the subatomic particles to the different laws in the universe. So these are very complex problems. On the other hand, our SDGs, each of them are really complex problems. And this is why we need to use methodology and approach of scientists to really speed up this process. First of all, if we want to really make informed decisions, if we want to make good strategies, we want to offer good, really effective solutions, we do need scientific principles to apply. On the other hand, I think more science should be used in metrics, in measurement of our advancement in reaching the SDGs. And this is where I do see science as really needed. Of course, science is driving, as I previously said, innovation and technological development, so they are indispensable, and they are the tools and the solutions from data collection analysis, remote sensing, Earth observation, health research, innovations in energy efficiency, digital inclusion, sustainable transportation. These are already present solutions with the huge scientific communities working on it. We need to use it more and more efficiently. And of course, what is maybe the most important aspect of science, it doesn't recognize the borders. So science, it's about collaboration. It's about working on the mutual project. It's about networking. And this is the only ways how are we going to solve at least part of these very, very, again, complex challenges. Collaboration geographical, but also across the disciplines and sectors. So not only scientists with all the stakeholders within one society and then across the border. We should, of course, invest more in science, and we cannot leave anyone behind. It's about the global scientific engagement. We have to strongly support science in less developed countries. We have to just include them in our networks. And this is how it works in science. So I do see really a science as a power, or maybe better to say as a compass that will really guide us toward reaching SDGs and toward more sustainable life between us and our surrounding and our nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you again to Serbia for leading the coalition of member states which made possible the declaration of this decade. As you certainly know, the initial impulse for the decade started in Belgrade a bit more than a year ago at a conference organized by your outstanding scientist, Nebojša Nešković. And in the context of the International Year of Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development, which is still ongoing, which will close at CERN on 15th of December. This year we have with us the Michel Spiro, who is the chair of the steering committee of the International Year. Michel, please share your thoughts. Thank you.
It works. I understand. So again, thanks to UNESCO for organizing this event. This was really great that we have this opportunity to exchange each other on the decade. The decade has not yet started, so we are still in the premises of the decade. It is a decade 2024-2033. Before this decade, as it was mentioned, there was this International Year of Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development, 2022-2023. This decade was supported by 50 international unions and organizations, 100 academies. It organized about 500 events, well attended. there were many outcomes from this international year that we will summarize in this closing ceremony at CERN on December 15th. But one of the outcomes, which is relevant for today, was that basic sciences, which are curiosity-driven, are essential for sustainable development because they feed the pool of knowledge that future generations will use to face their problems. But nevertheless, they are not enough. We need to embark all sciences, pure and applied, natural and social, humanities and traditional knowledge. So the call was to engage not only the scientists, but also society, securing support from private and public funding. This call to action, as it was mentioned, resulted in the proclamation of the International Decade of Science for Sustainable Development, IDSSD, with heartfelt appreciations extended to the Republic of Serbia for bringing this resolution to a unanimous consensus at the UN General Assembly on August 25th. I mentioned that this UN General Assembly was presided by Ambassador Xhava Korosi, who also was instrumental to get this decade. So during this decade, there is a collective responsibility to revolutionize. This is not, I think this is the right word, research practices. By this we mean developing transdisciplinary, sustainability-oriented territorial hubs or labs that involve together scientists and societies. So this is what is revolutionary in this approach, is to have labs combining science and society together in the labs, representing a novel approach to scientific engagement on various scales, at the scale of a village, at the scale of a region, at the scale of a country, at the scale of a continent, and at the global scale. And the overarching goal is to identify, because there are already some existing transdisciplinary labs we want to expand. So to identify them, to mobilize more, to interconnect them, to capitalize, to evaluate, to monitor, and synthesize, hopefully, thousands of these hubs. So if we have thousands of these hubs should contain about 100 people, I mean, from combining scientists, society, and decision makers. This makes 100,000 people mobilized. So we create, in that way, a robust and interconnected network of best practices and strategies and a community to transform the world. To accomplish this, there is a need to build upon the foundations led by IDSSD and the mobilization efforts of the International Science Council, because you were already active and even before us in that direction. This extension involves incorporating social sciences and humanities, I mentioned that, engaging sustainability-oriented funding agencies, private philanthropic sources, and fostering collaborative calls to establish these thousands of such hubs and labs. This visionary approach aims to establish a scientific community deeply connected to society and to public and private institutions, effectively becoming a potent driver of transformation. For the decade to achieve its potential, it requires comprehensive support from all quarters, encompassing unions, academies, scientific organizations, funding agencies, and philanthropic sources, both private and public. The envisioned actions necessitate a substantial and escalating level of funding throughout the decade, reaching in the range of tens of millions of euros in the later stage of the decade. However, the ultimate ambition, and I'm sure that Peter Gluckman will agree with that, is even more far-reaching. The decade aspires to catalyze a profound shift in research funding priorities, ultimately directing billions of euros towards practical science-based solutions for the challenges of sustainable development across all levels, from local to global. The ambition for the decade's implementation is nothing short than transformative. By its conclusion in 2033, substantial and tangible changes should have materialized worldwide, driven by the collaborative efforts of sciences in connection with all other key political, economical, and social stakeholders. This synergy between science and society aims to enhance the global capacity to address the multifaceted crises facing humanity, facilitating the development and implementation of constructive and peaceful responses, and steering the corresponding societal transformations. The decade is poised to have a profound impact on the realms of research, innovation, and development, with the goal of fundamentally reframing their roles in society and their interactions with policymaking, transcending all boundaries and contributing to a sustainable and thriving planet. In order to make it operational, by we I mean the follow-up of the International Year of Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development, the IDSSD organizer, foresees the adequacy of helping UNESCO as an implementation partner, so helping UNESCO as an implementation partner of the International Decade of Sciences for Sustainable Development. This will require the setup of one or more specific legal entities appropriate for international cooperation with the highest level of openness and transparency and of operational effectiveness at the same time. In this ambitious journey, we would like to embark as many member states as possible, ideally all of them. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Peter. So the ISC, the International Science Council, has been mentioned several times and has been also an active partner of the International Year. We have here Peter Gluckman, chairman of the ISC. Peter.
Well, first, let me thank Serbia for making the resolution through the UN. It was an important statement. And secondly, let me congratulate Lydia on being confirmed in a role, a very important role as the decade has started. We have two choices about the decade. We can treat it as just a tokenistic exercise where meetings are held and we talk about this is part of contributing to the decade. Or we can do something else. We can say, as the Serbian minister's already said, the world is in crisis, the sustainability agenda has fallen far behind. We could actually make a commitment that this should be a properly designed roadmap with lots of partners, the governmental partners, the multilateral system, the science community, which I represent. And let's do it properly. And so we are the ISC, which is the world's largest and most complete representative of the active science community, is absolutely committed that if we want to, we will reorientate our efforts alongside that of UNESCO as the lead agency to actually make this not just a tokenistic exercise, but to really address the issues. And to that extent, we've been working on it for several years. 4 years ago, we convened a meeting on why was science not adequately contributing to this sustainability agenda. That led to 3 reports: Unleashing Science, The Future of Transdisciplinary Research, and most recently, Flipping the Science Model. And all those reports, when taken together, say there are 2 fundamental things we need to do. The science system needs to look at itself, and it needs to change. And that means government, funders, universities, the science collectives need to change. We need to remove the limitations that lead science as internally focused, self-centered, not competitive, not producing actionable knowledge. We need to change that. That's not looking at the importance of basic science. But at the moment, we really need that actionable knowledge out there. And that means, as Michel has just said, the real emergence of Mode 2 research as a form of research that can be funded, supported, assessed, and taken with Mode 2 research, transdisciplinary research, community engaged, policy engaged, business engaged research, where the questions are driven by the needs of those people rather than the needs of the academics to get another paper published. So we've got to change the inside of the science system, and UNESCO and ISC in a unique position to work together with member states to get those changes. And I really believe, working with Gabriella and Lydia, that that is possible. And we're already starting on that path. Secondly, we need to look outside. That's the supply side. How do we change the production of science? We also need to think about the supply side. So we need to work with countries, agencies and funders to see ways that we can promote more effective use of knowledge and science. And that comes back to a giant challenge which Gabriella and I have been talking about already, which how do we promote trust in science? We've worked a lot on producing trustworthy science, but in a world of disinformation, how do we produce trustworthy science? And finally, as all of you, Michelle in particular said, complexity means using science differently. The way it's communicated is different. The way it's applied is different. And that means thinking a lot more about how governments incorporate science into their decision making. Often it's done in very narrow bits rather than strategic bits. And we need to think more about that interface as well. There's many actions I could suggest. I can't in my 3 minutes. But what I want to say is make a plea. We're willing as the International Science Council to orientate our work to take the decade as the roadmap under which we should work. We can't do it on our own. I think it's got to be a partnership with UNESCO and through UNESCO to the member states on one hand and through the ISC to the 250 scientific organisations we represent. So this is not a tokenistic exercise. This is actually like putting a rocket on the moon, actually planning out a decade and making the steps needed within the science system and beyond the science system so knowledge can lead to a safer planet, a better society, and we can let our grandchildren's grandchildren feel that we did something useful.
Thank you, Peter. So we have another dimension in that we wanted to hear in the panel. We have with us Mr. Roman Luckscheiter, Secretary General of the German National Commission for UNESCO. What is your view from that side?
Yeah, thank you very much also from my side, and it's an honor to be on this panel here today. I try to add some remarks from the perspective of a National Commission for UNESCO. First, perhaps a question regarding the relation of science and the Sustainable Development Goals. I guess science has 3 roles, more or less. First, as an enabler in teaching and research. Second, as a role model when it comes to the scientific spirit. And third, as a strong partner when it comes to the international network of science. And regarding the question what can be, or whether a decade can be a new framework for fostering sciences, I'd like to mention 3 aspects. First, a framework like a decade can strengthen the visibility of science. And the visibility means to make understandable and make it clear that science plays a crucial role in reaching the Sustainable Development Goals, to make clear that there is a strong impact, that there is a strong role of science in protecting our cultural and natural heritage, and also to develop it further, this heritage. And therefore we need to translate sometimes the language of science to the language of everyone. So I guess in this first component, it should be a strong component of the decade in science communication. And this is an issue not only for the researchers to translate what they are doing, but also for media and the society in general. So because we always need acceptance for science, it's taxpayers' money in many cases to fund the sciences, and therefore we have to create an understanding of the impact of science. The second aspect I'd like to mention is the aspect of accessibility. We have to focus on an accessible science when it comes to gender equality, when it comes to youth, when it comes to citizen science, because we need participation in science to get a really holistic approach to the scientific thinking and progress. And in this context, the recommendation of UNESCO on open science is very, very helpful. And I can tell you from Germany that the main and most important research organizations like the German Research Organization and the Helmholtz Society, they took this recommendation and integrated it explicitly in their guidelines for open science. So this is a milestone for the acceptance of open science. And a third aspect I'd like to mention is the credibility of science. It has already been mentioned, the trust in science, but I guess to promote also the values of science, we should focus on, within the communication of science, the aspect of values. The mindset of curiosity has been mentioned by Her Excellency, but also to communicate the uncertainty in science, that we don't have always truth at a sudden, or we always know what it is right or wrong, but to communicate the uncertainty is very important in a time where we have very confrontative thinking in discourses. And in this regard, I see the UNESCO chairs as key players, because they are under the umbrella of UNESCO, they have their UNESCO networks, and they can make it understand. And so to focus on UNESCO chairs as one pillar for the decade might be an opportunity. Just to give you an example, we have 16 chairs in Germany, and they organized a series of lectures in a digital sphere. And although they were coming from very different disciplines, they could cooperate and communicate with each other through the ideas of the 17 SDGs. Perhaps these are my 3 minutes.
Many thanks for these. Many thanks for these valuable insights. We have little time left. As you know, the agenda of the UNESCO General Conference is pretty packed, but I would take a very few minutes to see if somebody in the audience has a burning question or comment. Not a long intervention, please. Just a real question or short comment. Does anybody want to say something? Could you, Peter? Come here and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Nigel Krohol, I'm Chief of Section on Local and Indigenous Knowledge Systems. As you know, UNESCO is the only UN entity with a specialized team on Indigenous knowledge. And the question's for Peter, because I know he's been thinking about this. Maybe you want to say more about transdisciplinary cooperation, about multiple knowledge systems.
Thanks, Nigel. Well, the important point is science is only one knowledge system. It has a particular role in producing reliable knowledge from observation on the world around us and within us. But everybody lives with multiple knowledge systems, be them religion, be them local knowledge, indigenous knowledge, professional knowledge, and so forth. And what transdisciplinarity, what I call Mode 2 research, requires is all those stakeholders are in the room at once to both explore and define the question and define the research methodology that is used. Because it's only then at the end that the answer will be one that is accepted by those who need to apply the knowledge. And that's a very complex process, Nigel, and the funding systems we have now, from national funders, from foundations, from the way universities operate, don't support that research at all, which is why we wrote those 3 reports I referred to. I believe for the so-called wicked problems, which is really the sustainability agenda as the way it's now interpreted, Mode 1 research will be needed, as Michael said, for the technology of the future, the next battery or the next software or whatever, or the next drug. But to deal with the wicked problems, the governments and the foundations need to move to create systems for true transdisciplinary research to happen, and that includes describing what it is well and having new tools of assessing, because the product is more likely not to be a paper in Nature or science is more likely to be a change in the behaviour in a region that leads to a cleaner valley, or a change in the behaviour of some policies that the government makes. And that's a more important output to me than a paper in Nature. So I think this is the deep changes in the science system. We can lead, and it will be controversial from the scientific side, but we need the partnership with UNESCO and the member states if we're to achieve the changes. I do not believe we'll make any impact on the sustainability agenda in the way we all want to unless we have this fundamental change.
Thank you.
Can I just add something there, and really that's why Peter, as you know, Nigel, on the natural science sector, we are pushing now a much bigger program on citizen science that you also mentioned, because it's precisely that, is the co-design of the scientific questions, and is the co-production of knowledge for transformative behavior and development. And that is really what this decade is also about, is the human right to science. And the human right to science is the part of benefiting from scientific knowledge, but there is a right to participate and co-create that knowledge that is really important for us. And I think that's really the point, that it's really not one. So the knowledge systems will have to talk to each other, but they have to talk also to the communities where they are embedded.
Indeed. So I think we made clear that one of the purposes of this decade is to overcome the modern and to some extent, or to a large extent, artificial chasm between science and humanism. To practice what we preach, I want now to give the floor to Mrs. Gabriela Ramos, UNESCO Assistant Director General for Social and Human Sciences, to have also your input from that perspective. Gabriela?
Thank you so much, Carlos, and great to be with the champions and with all of you. And yes, I come from the social and human science sector, and we have heard first, congratulations, thank you, Minister, and thank you to Serbia for this. And thank you all for being here. Lydia, fantastic call. But let me tell you, I could not agree more that this needs to call all the sciences, but in a very different way of what we have been doing up to now. I think that is not only about conducting research that will call for some scientific approaches and then come with some add-ons of other contributions from different knowledge, but also from different sciences. I really think we need to bring together different insights in a transdisciplinary way. And this is not easy, because first and foremost, we need to change the way we do science. And I think this is something we cannot neglect in this exercise. I feel that many times we have hierarchies of sciences that put together, that leave some contributions that we can make apart. And I have to say that science is also led to action, and this is something that you have been saying. It cannot be, Minister, as you said, let's just do a nice research, let's continue understanding better the world, if this is not going to be translated into action. And I have to say that we need to be humble, because in some cases we have all the science we need for action, and there is no action. And therefore, I think this is one of the questions that we need to ask. We have all the science for the climate transition, and there is no action. So maybe it's not about finding more information on how do we go for eliminating or dewiring from fossil fuel consumption, but how do we put together the decision-making processes that might need also scientific endeavors to take action. I think this is very important. And this is led to what Peter was saying, the question of trust in science. We also need to understand what context we are living in. Another challenging task for science is to deal with artificial intelligence, because it's going to change the way we are conducting science. But again, it's putting together the scientific consensus on a very few connoisseurs, not those that can handle the things, that will decide what kind of scientific agenda, that will decide how to approach it, that will have the financing, and then the rest of the world will be just watching. And this is very important because the science is produced in certain corners in the world, but not everywhere. And I think we need to change that, and we need to make progress on this very long-lasting issue that we have. Now, I have some additional comments coming from the sector where I stand. We also need to make science based on universal values. I think this is also important. No science for everything. I'm in charge of the ethics of science and technology, and I feel this is very important, based on universal values like justice, inclusion, human rights. We also need to make sure that all the voices are heard, full and equal access to participating in science for all, open and safe environments to practice science. This is something we will be discussing in the social and human science sector. How do we ensure the ecosystems of science that respects the rights of scientists and that protects scientists? Because we live in a world of mounting populism, of mounting neglect from science, and we need to push that. And of course, how do we make sure, Lydia, we work on that, women and girls that can overcome the persisting stereotypes on science. And so I feel that this is not an easy walk in the park. It's going to be tough, but I think that the kind of insights that we have in these discussions will help us navigate properly. And finally, let me just say, it's very important that we do the connection between science and policy making. And for that, I feel that the social and human sciences have a lot to contribute, because if it is not through economics, sociology, history, anthropology, we do not do the translation between science and policy decisions. So count on us, and happy to join this journey that is just starting, and great to have Lydia with us as our ADG Science. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gabriela, for these pointing at some of the challenges of the decade. That's it for now. We finish with Swiss punctuality. I'm afraid that you will hear a lot more about this decade. You know, we have a decade to transform science and societies. As you heard, we have high ambitions, and we will need everybody involved, particularly all of you in this room. And for now, we will call this conversation, not without giving a final and strong applause to all our panelists. Gabriela.